I finally can do the Johnson and Johnson.
Johnson and Johnson, right.
If they're sitting beside each other, it's going to make it even more fun. It's going well. How are you? Yeah, I figure as much. You've probably seen on Twitter that I'm poking people going, "Great, you're tweeting, don't you?" Which I love some of the hate mail I'm getting. It's like, if you people can't read between the lines.
Good morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order, and members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and or visually recording this meeting. Madam Clerk, good morning. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, we just have the delegation request from Scott McPherson and Stephen Bolt from respecting the project number C13-49-1420 Road, wastewater pumping station capacity upgrades. And that was approved back at the December meeting, but they are able to attend this meeting, so thus they're here.
And we approve them being able to present at this meeting. Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Do I have any declarations of interest today? Seeing none. And may I have an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting of December the 15th? Moved by Councillor Masuda, second by Councillor Aiden Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And may I have a motion to approve the December 15th? Oh, we got that. Delegation requests. There's no new ones today. I'm going to go through consent items. We'll do it one by one because it's usually is easier. So consent item 5.1 is the 2014 OMERS proposed plan changes considered by sponsors corporations. Any questions or comments? Motion to approve, moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Brenda Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 5.2 is capital project status as of September 30th, 2014. Questions or comments? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, thank you. And if I could just refer to page 1 of 3. There's the automated workflow approvals, and it started off as a budget of $265,000, and there's only $33,915 committed. And the project development and testing are in progress and on budget. Should this project go over budget, funds will be pulled from the PeopleSoft upgrade project ID number, blah, blah, blah. And two questions here. One is it expected to go over budget?
Through you, Madam Chair, we're not sure at this point. Since the capital project was approved, there's actually two phases to this project. One was the fit gap that was approved in 2013, and then there was the implementation that was approved in 2014 capital budget. And we just realized that there's some discrepancy in what's been reported here. But the question, Councillor Johnson, when we went to the implementation phase, we learned that the cost of the licenses had increased. And so there could be an additional charge related to the licenses that we put in place.
Okay, thank you for that. And another question, please. If you are over budget, funds will be pulled from the PeopleSoft upgrade. Will this not rob that account of funds that are needed for a PeopleSoft upgrade?
So through you again, Madam Chair.
So through the chair to the councillor, I believe what talent was identified with respect to the project is there may be a clerical error in the spreadsheet, in that there was a 2014 follow-up project for the HR automated workflow with additional approved funding. and therefore this spreadsheet before you is not complete, and that there would be some additional funding for that project through that 2014 approved capital project. So we will correct that clerical error, and we can provide that additional information to the committee members.
Okay, thank you for that. And the second question I have, if you go down under corporate services, the common address database, business requirements are 75% complete and will be finalized by 2014. Next phase of project will begin in 2015. I'm not familiar with the common address database. Can you enlighten me on this project, please?
So through the chair, I was just looking to see if someone from IT is here who can provide you greater detail. But the common address database affects a number of departments, including paramedics and planning, as it relates to trying to develop a database whereby the service providers would have accurate information as to our citizens' addresses, so that when they respond to an incident or a request, that again, they have the accurate information. The project was somewhat delayed through the RFP process. I believe we've issued the RFP, and I'm not sure if we've awarded, but you may recall that Audit provided a report in June of 2014 that had some recommendations as it relates to the to this particular capital project. And so staff took those recommendations, and we went back out to the departments to ensure that we had all of their business solution needs. And the reason for doing that was, if we can come up with one solution rather than a number of technology solutions, that would be our preferred action going forward. So it was somewhat delayed. We wanted to ensure that when we went out with the RFP, we had complete information as per Audit's recommendations.
Thank you, Mike. That explains a lot. Appreciate it. To page 3 of 3, financial program, we have the call handling implementation. I know this has been something that I've been trying to ask for the last 4 years, why we're not dispersing the call centers out into existing offices rather than having them centralized into one. So this project, this $2,563,000 project, is to centralize it into one. Am I getting that correct?
So through the chair, in terms of that particular service channel, the objective is to drive a number of services to the call handling center in order to derive some efficiencies. But with respect to the municipal service centers, they too will be leveraged in order to support that function. So I just don't want to leave the impression that we aren't leveraging, for instance, the municipal service centers, and that it is simply being centralized. A number of functions are being centralized at the call center. We are leveraging resources outside of the call center.
Thank you, Mike. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to receive and approve the IFIQ? Oh, Councilor Ferguson, you had a question? My apologies.
Yeah, just a quick
Yes.
question. And this report is rather timely in light of some emails that were floating around the weekend. And I know, Madam Chairman, there's, particularly Councilor Collins, has had a lot of issues with projects that aren't finished that are as much as 5, 6, 7 years old. And are they really not finished, or are they WIPs that could be returned and used for other capital projects? And I know that Mr. Murray responded on the weekend, and staff will be looking to this, but through you to Mike. Mike, is this something that finance needs to get their head around also before you come to us with capital projects, about these projects that are, budget back in 06 or 07, money still has not been spent, but they're asking for more money for very similar things. How are we going to get our head around that? Because I know Councillor Collins has been trying for 4 years on this, and we keep bumping into the same thing year after year.
So through the chair, let me just first remind council that we do have a policy, a capital closing policy. So staff go through, I think I mentioned last week, we have 1,070 active capital projects, which represent approximately $1.3 billion in approved budget. Staff go through that list of 1,070 active projects and apply our capital closing policy. So the capital closing policy, to remind committee members, states that any projects outside of 3 years post-council approval should be closed unless there is a outstanding commitment, if the project is still active, if there is a litigation action. And so we go through that process in an effort to, in the case where there is surplus funding, in an effort to free up that funding. And I'll just remind councillors, as it may arise at the end of the week when we have our next capital budget meeting, if a capital project is closed as per the policy, the funds go back to the original funding source. So if it was funded from a reserve, the funds go back to the reserve, and it may not represent a potential funding source for future year capital projects. If the fund was, or a project was debt funded, the funding goes to reduce our debt requirements. So again, it may not provide funding for future capital projects. So I just want to remind councillors of that. But in terms of our process, as staff go through that process, we try to adhere to the policy, and then I'll remind committee members, you have a, we just discussed our capital status report. Each and every standing committee receive capital status reports, typically 3 capital status reports through the year, whereby staff provide updates as to the status of the various capital projects that fall within the mandate of the standing committee. So again, that information is shared with council. With respect to some of the questions regarding proposed 2015 capital projects, I will be sitting down with the city manager, and we'll review those emails, and we will review those 1,070 capital projects as well, to see prior to Friday's next capital budget meeting whether there may be the opportunity to defer some 2015 capital projects if there's currently WIP funding for previous approved projects, or whether or not WIP projects can be closed out. So again, we will be working, staff will be working through the week leading up to our next capital budget meeting this Friday to see whether or not some funding can be freed up for other council priorities, including roads.
I fully expect we'll be having a wholesome discussion about this on Friday, but my main question to you, Mike, is you say that your staff review all 1,070 of them, and some are 3, 4, 5 years old, and anything more than 3 years old is your policy is. But your staff simply just accepted that, no, we're not done yet, or do you give a little pushback on that?
So through the chair, similar to what councillors have asked over the weekend in terms of additional information as to why projects should remain open, that's the type of information that we request from staff. But I will remind committee members that at the end of my presentation last week, I included a slide of projects that represent about 19, just short of $20 million in projects that we will be recommending that we close out. So I just don't want to leave the impression with councillors that we remain silent. Once we've asked the question, we continue to follow up with departments in order to assess the priority of the forthcoming project, in the case of 2015, any proposed 2015 projects, if there are any outstanding active projects, or the potential to close any active projects and free up that funding.
Okay, Madam Chair, my reason I'm raising today under this capital budget report is I just want to make sure that finance staff are providing enough challenges to other departments and what they're doing in capital budgets. I heard today that it is any project more than 3 years, rather than simply say the department says, yes, I'm not finished, okay, next, and move on, because I know Councillor Collins in particular has been grilling at this for at least 3 years that I can recall, and it keeps coming back year after year without a resolution. And so I'm sure we'll have more wholesome discussion about this on Friday at the capital budget meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, could I have a motion to receive the report? Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Brenda Johnson, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 5.3 is the employee attendance report, Q1 to Q3 2014. Questions? Councillor Brenda Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. It's really curtailing on what I've been asking for quite some time. But I really want to draw my attention to page 8 of 12, and if I could ask the Chief Fire. We've had a wholesome discussion of this chart, and I just wanted to get his comments from this, please. Yep. Morning, Chief.
Good morning, Councillor.
Through you, Chair, to the Chief, when you look at page 8 of 12, I first of all need to understand, is this per 7 hours per day, or is this a 24-hour day that you and I had this discussion about?
Through the chair, it's calculated based on a 7-hour day.
And do you have any comments on that, and whether or not this is really the true picture?
Certainly, through the chair and to members of the committee, as council would recall, last year I had occasion to meet with members of council. I provided clarification with respect to the business intelligence tool which had been developed through Human Resources. At that time, I acknowledged the importance of that BI tool and to the work that Zach had done on our behalf. What I had indicated was that initially, through HR, they were doing a significant amount of work in terms of doing the calculations. We had talked about the merits of maintaining either reporting out on 7-hour shift versus 24-hour shifts and so forth. For the purposes of this report, it is based on a 7-hour shift. I think what is worthy to note that at that juncture when I had met with members of council, I cited that sometimes when you report it out at 7 hours and you look at a denominator of 10.37 days, it makes it sound like someone's missed 10.37 24-hour shifts. That's not correct. It's a multiplier of that 7 hours. What isn't reported here, and I don't want to get ahead of the report itself, however, what I had indicated to members of council when I met with you, that as a result of the information provided in the BI tool, we were able to use that information and take a focused approach, in particular in Q4, which is not included in this report. But I can tell you, as I sit before you here today, last year we experienced a 46% reduction in our overtime. I'll say that again, we had a 46% reduction in our overtime, and much of the credit of that goes to Deputy Chief Dave Cunliffe and the work that we have received from the BI, the information we got from the BI tool. So again, while we were trending slightly up and down throughout the 3 quarters of last year, we noticed that because of the way in which the numbers were being calculated, we wanted to make sure that they were accurately reflecting in terms of what our attendance were. We did a deep dive on that. In response to the information I met with members of council, I provided that clarification, and we finished the year, as I say, 46% less than we spent a year ago in terms of our overtime budget, and 50% from the year before that.
And thank you for that, Chief. I was anticipating that answer. Through your chair to the Chief, if this chart was converted to 24-hour shift, would the numbers, percentages change?
For the first 3 quarters of last year, the numbers actually had gone up by 1.5 shifts per employee, and that's what caught our attention last year. Certainly, if you take that 10.37 days, multiply it by 7 and divide by the 24, we were experiencing a bump up. And throughout the last couple of years, we've either bumped up a bit or bumped down a bit. However, when we saw this trending up again, we went back to it, looked at it. That was the impetus for us to for our deputy to engage our staff relative to incidental absenteeism, which had been identified as a priority for council. And with the BI tool, we were able to identify those areas that we should focus upon.
And thank you again. And I've said this since day one, this is not a union or a non-union. This is a corporate issue that we are dealing with holistically, and it's wonderful that the tools are starting to come into place so that we can help those that are experiencing difficulty coming into work for whatever reason. So my next question is, and thank you very much for that, Chief, really appreciate that. When I look over the absences, have we broken it down? This is the entire corporation, correct? Through you to Helen?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
On table 1 presents the entire corporation.
Okay, thank you. So although the trend looks like we are coming down, it's not as significant as we were hoping to. Is there anything in a crystal ball to say that this is going to come down even further, or have we put some things in place to help people come to work and feel healthy and be in a healthy environment?
Through you, Madam Chair, there were a couple of interventions we put in place, which we've seen some very encouraging response. When we were before you in May of last year, we spoke to you about our ability to identify the top 10 to 20% of employees who had higher incidental absenteeism than the majority of the population. We were able to isolate who those individuals were and gave senior management the information about those individuals. And if you can see in the report that once senior management took attention to these individuals in situations where they might have needed some additional support, or if there was some potential abuse of the system, corrections were made and the trend changed. And we continue to see that positively in the organization, and our next approach would be to then look at who the next 10 to 20% are and carry on with that kind of intervention. We have also made modifications to our attendance support program, listening to management about areas where they're having greatest difficulty and providing greater support from our return to work services. And we continue to provide a thorough training program for all supervisors and above who are responsible for managing attendance. On the significant illnesses where we're talking about individuals who've had surgery or have cancer or more longer term critical health issues, we continue to provide intense support from our return to work services staff, and we saw a decline in that this past first 3 quarters, and which is also reflected in the increase in our modified sick absence, which is a good thing because that indicates that we are bringing our employees back to work sooner with support from our management and human resources.
Okay, thank you for that, and through you to Mr. Murray. Chris, when I'm looking at, we're always gearing to the numbers. We're always looking at how much this is costing us, but I really would like to highlight as well the percent of all EEs with 0 paid sick hours. And we're looking at anywhere from 93%, 92%, 86%. I think that speaks volumes. That there is healthy employment out there. It's just a matter of now trying to dwindle down the others that are having difficulty coming back. I still keep coming back with the suggestion box but one that doesn't go directly to their supervisor. There's got to be a way that we have the employees actually be able to talk to you and bypass. And this is how I'm looking at it. If I was the supervisor and there was something in the suggestion box that was pertaining to me, how fast do you think I want to process that? So if it went straight, if there was some sort of a streamline to go straight to the head honcho, if you will, and then maybe that might help as well. And I'm not saying that the 17% are having, toxic environments. I'm not even going there, but for the 1 or 2 that maybe, this would be something else we could maybe curb.
So, to you, Chairman, as you know, I mean, I have a program whereby I go out to any part of the organization 1 day a month. People can book my time to come, and through that, actually, I do get those kinds of suggestions that you're talking about. Additionally, people do book their time with me, and I do meet with staff one-on-one. It's not all about complaints and things that aren't going well, but ideas that are being generated. And for whatever reason, they're choosing to bring them to me and not to their own management, which isn't a problem at all. So in terms of creating something more formal, I know we talked about and reported back last term on a suggestion program, which largely, they're successful for a very short period of time, and then they don't seem to work as well as we'd like. I can tell you though, and I want to sit down with council and talk to you a bit more about just the way in which we look at our processes in our organization, and always ask ourselves the question, can we do it better? There are ways in which to engage the front line to get their ideas so that they don't necessarily require a phone call to the city manager or a meeting with them. In fact, it's just normal part of the culture that leadership is working with the front line and always asking themselves the question, are we getting as much value for the money as we could, and what are the ideas that the front line has? Because as you know and I know, as talented leadership as we have in this organization, you know, the rubber hits the road at the front line. They're the ones that have the best sense of what's working and not working. And when we have a relationship with them that is, you know, as positive as it needs to be, those ideas will surface, and we should be able to tackle them and bring those ideas to action. There are things called Six Sigma, lean process, that in fact my office through our corporate initiatives director will be instituting across the organization. And I say that, and hopefully you don't get the impression that we're not always looking at different parts of our organization to improve, because I know in public health it's a requirement from the province that they do engage in this kind of process review. I know we've been doing this in public works, I know it happens in community services, but just in terms of the whole organization getting more used to the fact that every day that we need to look at the nature of our processes, our business, and ask ourselves the question, can we do it better? It's something that will be instituted across the organization through my office. So I think not just one-offs where people phone me and have an idea, but I think culturally as an organization it should be just normal business that we're always working with our front line to do things better.
Thank you, Chris. I'd like to go offline for the rest of my questioning, because it's really just to drill down on see if some of the emails I'm receiving, because we all get them. There are people who live in our wards that work for the city, and we get these emails. So I'd like to have that conversation. Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Seeing no further questions, can I have a motion, Councilperson? Thank you.
Just one more question to the chief. I'm new to this committee. I've been sitting on the bleachers watching all this issue around sick leave, and I do see a downward trend. It's still too high, but to the chief, there it is. You say you had a 48% reduction in sick time, 50% from the previous year. What does that mean in money?
Through the chair and to members of the committee, what I indicated, Councillor, was that, so for example, I had spoken about once we were able to benefit from the BI tool and be able to take a more focused approach relative to incidental absenteeism. To give you some quantitatively in terms of the sense of this, a year ago, our budget, we spent $950,000 within the Hamilton Fire Department on overtime. This past year, we spent, I believe, $514,000, almost 46.6% reduction. The year before that, we had spent $1,050,000, excuse me, $1,030,000 the year before, and last year again, $516,000. So we have reduced our overtime expenditures the past 2 years now, and it's this year 46% over 2013. And in response to Councillor Johnson's question on this, I was trying to quantitatively in terms of speak about the benefits of what we've derived as a result of having a robust capacity within the BI tool and the work that Deputy Cunliffe had done in this regard.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you and your team. You say David played a big role in that.
He certainly did. He was very vigilant and very committed, as he always is.
That kind of reduction takes a whole team effort of saving $500,000. But through you to the chief, the way you're able to do this is through a new software mapping process, and that identifies chronic absentee problems and allows you to focus in on those individuals. Is that how it works?
Through the chair and to committee members, one of the many applications of the BI tool is to be able to look at trending. And certainly, to the point that was made earlier here, I'll give you examples. In the past several years, we've doubled the number of employees who don't miss any time whatsoever in the past 4 years. So that's a good news story. So I certainly don't want to leave committee or council or our listeners the view that attendance is a problematic. It's just that we know as a result of being identified as a priority of council, council's priority is my priority, and the priority was incidental absenteeism. As a result of the BI tool, what we can do is very quickly we can map out and we can see if there's trending in terms of pattern absenteeism. And as a result of taking a very vigilant approach, and I believe Deputy Cunliffe had 25 or 28 meetings with staff, plus numerous follow-ups with medical certificates and so forth. And we're basically using the tools that are available to us. And between the BI tool and being able to secure doctors' documentation from healthcare professionals, it's derived a benefit. And we are going to continue on. We know that this is a priority for our administration as a result of the concerns expressed by council. We're going to continue on in that regard.
Okay, well, thank you. And what does BI stand for? I'm new to this committee.
It's a business intelligence tool, and it's derived, and Helen's staff have done a tremendous job, and they're a great resource to us at the Hamilton Fire Department.
Well, congratulations again, Chief. And so if I can to Helen, with this new BI tool, it's between a 50% reduction, 46% reduction in fire absenteeism. Are you using it in other departments and seeing the same sort of reduction?
Through you, Madam Chair, I have two people talking to me as well as Councillor Ferguson, but just to be clear, what the Chief is talking about is a reduction in overtime, which is a really positive result. The focus of the BI tool for us in 2014 was on looking at patterned absenteeism. So we were looking to reduce absenteeism of individuals who had excessive incidental absenteeism. And so this would be people who had multiple occasions of 1, 2, and 3 days of absence, absences always on Mondays or Fridays, or always taking a particular day of the year off. We are able to, with this intelligence tool, drill down into the employee level and trend over time to see what their patterns are like. We then provided this documentation to senior management to review with their management and have conversations with these individuals who had patterned absenteeism. So what the Chief is describing is he was able to sit down with one of our staff, Zach, who actually presented this tool to this committee last year, to show him where he had some challenges in his department, and the Chief and his deputies got right on it, and we saw a change.
Okay, I'm not sure my question was answered, so I'll ask.
I may not have heard you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll ask it again.
Okay.
The Chief has experienced a 46% reduction in overtime. And overtime and absenteeism, for the most part, would run hand in hand. Unless there's a big fire and he has to have a number of people work overtime to tackle the fire. And so if he's seeing this dramatic 46% reduction in fire, three Madam Chairman, are other departments following their lead, using the same BI tool to do the same thing to reduce overtime and absenteeism with the same sort of success?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is a challenge we have right now, and we have certainly been asked by Council to address this matter, and Councillor Collins will know that he's been very diligent in asking that question. We went at this with our F&A staff over the last number of months, and unfortunately, we're not seeing that trend overall. There isn't a direct correlation between overtime and absenteeism, but part of our challenge is we do not have complete data, because the reason for overtime is not put into the PeopleSoft system. It's not coded that way, so we can't do the analysis. We can look at it in situations where, such as essential services, it's easier to determine because they have to call people in when it's an essential service. But we are not able to, at this point, determine that across the organization. I don't know if...
Okay. I apologize. Through the chair and to the committee members, there are a number of variables here, and certainly, by example, one of the things that Helen spoke of is that whenever we have staff who are not on duty, we replace them. So we have to make sure we have adequate staffing on our response units. The other thing is that we're very mindful in terms of whether we're sending people away on training programs and so forth. That has an implication. And we were extremely vigilant last year because we were uncertain as to where our overtime expenditures would be. So we were very prudent in terms of which training programs we participated in outside of the organization. So there's a variety of factors that influence that bottom line. However, I know that certainly it's incumbent upon all of us in terms of being very fiscally prudent in this area, and it's something here that we've looked at. And so between taking a measured approach in terms of which training programs we're going to participate in and other initiatives, as well as, of course, the absenteeism, the cumulative impact of all of our efforts came to 46%. And that was a great question, Councillor Ferguson, because I wouldn't want to leave the impression that the committee that it was mutually exclusive to sick leave unto itself. So thank you for that.
Okay, and so I think what I'm hearing, Madam Chairman, maybe the city manager can straighten this up for me. I think I'm hearing that you're probably not getting the same buy-in to this new software in some departments that we got in fire. I think that's what I'm hearing. I don't know whether Chris has any further comment on that, and then I'll be quiet. I'm assuming that because Helen's so diplomatic that she doesn't want to publicly point the finger at it, but I think that's what I heard.
So if I can, through Chairman, I think, so Helen, I want to answer, and I'll just, before you answer, Helen, I mean, what's good about this conversation is that I can always take it back to SMT and communicate to them the impression that you're under in light of what success the Chief and his staff have incurred. But I would not want to leave you or the media or anyone under the impression that that our GMs and directors aren't vigilant. I mean, we were told in no uncertain terms by committee that we needed to get a handle on our attendance management. We have better tools, as you now know. BI's tool is incredibly useful to us. All departments are utilizing it, as Helen pointed out. The individuals, and I think I referred to them as the frequent flyers, the ones that seem to kind of have that pattern absentee. I mean, we were all over that, and I think we've made great progress there. But to your point, I'm not going to go as far as to say that the other departments are more lackadaisical when it comes to this. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think that's a fair assessment. But I will bring the nature of this conversation back to SMT, and they'll tell me one way or another just how much effort I know they are putting into the program.
That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Hi, sorry if I'm bringing forward a question or a suggestion that is already in practice, but I'd like to ask, has there been consideration of holding meetings with city workers to discuss appropriate versus inappropriate use of sick days? And I ask because sometimes there is confusion or mixed points of view in workforces about appropriate versus inappropriate use of sick days.
That's a good question. And our attendance management training was rolled out to all the leadership in the organization to remind them what that attendance management program is all about. And part of that is for those individuals to go back to their respective staffs and to have those kinds of conversations with them, so that it's clear what we expect people to do when it comes to being at work, and it's clear to individuals in this organization, leadership and frontline combined, when they're not well, what the policy is in terms of them being off sick. So we, to answer your question in short, I would say yes. And I say that only because I know we've spent a tremendous amount of effort in the last 12, 18 months making certain that our leadership is very clear about the program and how it is that it's supposed to be operating. So that's my answer.
Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I have one question. I think we've made great strides over the last year in terms of sorting out the information. So there was some question before in terms of what was included in our average sick day time, and we've had a great presentation from Helen and others in terms of now we know the true number because we've separated maternity leaves and long-term disability, as well as those people who have are off of work with severe illnesses. Some might be going through cancer treatments and so on. And so we've been able to separate that information, and we have a clear understanding now in terms of where our true number is. And so that was certainly a milestone last year in terms of reaching that point. I have a question though in terms of the averages. So the averages seem to be flatlined right now in terms of, if I'm looking at separating all those categories, is it the 8 that we're looking at now across the corporation? I know you've broken it down departmentally, but is it the 8 point, I don't have it in front of me. 8.22.
So, through you, Madam Chair, Councillor, yes, and really what we want to do is to focus on the segments that add up to the 8. And when you see the annual report, which will come in a few months from now, you're going to see this report progressed even further. We really put a focus on the incidental absenteeism last year, and that was the whole drive with the BI tool and looking to see if we could, better manage the frequent flyers. And I think we have proven that we have better tools to do that with that. We have also put in additional supports to bring people back to work on modified work. So we're seeing improvement in our significant illness and improvement in the modified sick. What we will always have challenges with is when we have a bad year. So last year, we can see, and we're gonna have better data to know this over time, that when you have a rough winter and you have more flu in the system, we had a lot more illness in the first quarter of 2014 than we have had since 2008, and there was a lot of flu going around it. So it's going to take us a little while to really understand how much we can influence the numbers. We think that we can through due diligence of supervisors and having communications with their staff, putting in good workforce climate, provisions, better relationships, discussing matters with your staff, we will see improvement there. We are also dealing with, of course, the fact of an aging workforce, so we're seeing more surgeries, musculoskeletal, etc. So I'm not sure that I've answered your question, Councillor, but...
Well, my question was going to be the, what's next if the trend either flatlines or gets a little bit worse than what we anticipate. I think the 8 was the average for government agencies across the country from past reports, if memory serves me right. That seemed to be the industry average, and we were, I thought, at least our past council had adopted a policy of we want to be better than the average, and we want to decrease those incidental absences as much as possible in all work areas of the organization. My question would be, because we're responsible now for certainly for the next 4 years in terms of the governance and all policies related to the organization, what happens if by the end of 14 that trend isn't changing to our satisfaction? What's the plan in terms of getting us to a lower number, knowing that we've made some changes and there are certainly some factors that we need to account for in terms of an aging workplace, in terms of seasonal issues that might come up in terms of a bad year for the flu. But if we see the trend over the first 1 or 2 years and we're still in that 8.2, 8.5, maybe something a little higher, what's our recourse at that?
So through Madam Chair, our first plan is to, again, to look at who the next 10, the top 10% are. Our second course of action is continuing on with return to work to see if we can maximize that any further, given the resources that we have now. And the other thing is to really be due diligent around our own trending, because when you start looking at other organizations, we're not always comparing the same thing. They put different things into their buckets around what a short-term disability is or a long-term disability. So we'll have to see if we have to make any tweaking with our programs, with our income protection plan, which then gets into discussions with our unions during negotiation. So we're trying to, use every lever we have at our disposal right now. We are constantly in conversation with other organizations. In fact, across the country, last week, the executive director of HR, or 2 weeks ago from Vancouver, called me and wanted to compare some ideas around absenteeism management, what they're doing. We're sharing our respective programs. We have an audit that's underway right now that is being done by our internal audit, and we're always in the business of continuous improvement to our interventions. They may in fact find some things that we haven't even thought of, but we have continually made changes as we see them to improve the situation.
Thanks. And I would just close by saying that, if in fact after a year or 2 years, after having investigated and spent a lot of time on this issue, I think we might want to investigate more levers to pull if the ones that we're pulling right now aren't working. So I'm happy with where we were with the progress we made last year. My only concern is that now that we've reached the point where we are now, if something doesn't change internally, I don't see those incidental absences going down. That's all. And I want to be prepared for the worst. I'm hoping that it trends in the opposite direction, but in our business, unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't happen, and we need a plan to deal with it if it doesn't. So I appreciate the information and the answers that you provided.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, may I have a motion to receive item 5.3, moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, seconded by Councillor Wade Ferguson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to item 6.1, which is the public hearings delegation. And I'm going to invite Scott McPherson and Stephen Gold to come forward with your delegation today. I want to make sure that they're aware that you have 5 minutes in which to present. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good morning. I was under the impression we had 10 minutes, but I'll go quite quickly here. I'd like to thank the City Council for giving us the opportunity to address this issue today. My name is Steve Bald. I'm the President of Purchasing Consultants International, working with North American Construction related to the procurement process. This relates to your contract number C134914 for the 20-row wastewater pumping station capacity upgrades. North American Construction was the lowest bid by $325,000 on a $2 million job, approximately 18% lower than the next bidder. The portion of the carpenter's work was about $40,000, or approximately 2.9% of the entire project. This work was being done by Reamer Forming and Construction, who is a union signatory contractor to the carpenters and was the contractor that did the carpentry work for the new Tiger Cat Stadium for Canadian Contracting, who is not signatory to the Carpenters Union. My question is that it would appear that sometimes the general contractor has to be signatory to the carpenters on some contracts, and sometimes you don't need to as a general contractor, as in the case of the football stadium. It would most likely end up that Reamer would be still doing the work on the new project, except you'll be paying $325,000 more for the exact same quality of work from the same subcontractor using a different general contractor. The rules should apply to everyone. If you want to cut down on your bidding pool to a few select contractors, you should clearly state on the front of the tender documents that only general contractors that are signatory to the Carpenters Union shall bid on all City of Hamilton contracts. That way the bulk of the general contractors available to bid won't waste their time preparing bids and possibly getting disqualified. The City of Toronto, for example, is also signatory to the carpenters. However, they allow general contractors that are not, providing they use signatory carpenters to do the carpentry work. Should Hamilton want to attract more qualified contractors, perhaps they should take the lead of the City of Toronto to follow the same rules hiring contractors. In Toronto, the rules are applied fairly across the board. The concern in Hamilton for contractors like NAC is why the rules are sometimes applied to the question of certifications and sometimes not. NAC feels that they have not been treated in a fair, open, and transparent way after completing all the requirements of the tender right up to the award and then being disqualified. I'd now like to turn it over the remaining time to Scott McPherson, the President of North American Construction, for his point of view as the general contractor submitting the low bid.
To give you an idea of who we are, North American Construction is one of the largest water and wastewater treatment general contractors in Canada. We have or are presently performing work in British Columbia, Alberta, the Northwest Territories, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Nova Scotia, and now New Brunswick. Our head office is actually very local. We're just located south of Guelph and Morrison, Ontario, and employees of ours, actually, some of them are from Hamilton as well. We specialize in building water and wastewater treatment plants, and we've built single plants in excess of $200 million. Most of our projects we tend to require that our company pre-qualify prior to bidding the project, and that's exactly what we've done with this for 20 road pumping station. The City of Hamilton received 13 contractors' information. However, they only pre-qualified 8 and ourselves for a total of 9. After this process, we submitted a tender for the project, and we were low bid of 4 contractors submitting bids. Our bid is 18% lower than the next bid, or $325,000 on a small $2 million project. We were not surprised as to how low we were, because this is not uncommon for ourselves, as we specialize in water and wastewater treatment plants. It's not uncommon for us to be that much cheaper, while we are still ensuring that we meet all the specifications of the project and ensure that we've carried the wage provisions in excess of Hamilton's local fair wage policy. This is as well why we've been asked by many municipalities across Canada to come and bid their specific projects. The tender documents in Hamilton are very clear. The City of Hamilton is signatory to the Carpenters Union, and as such, all the carpentering works must be performed by carpenters who are from the Carpenters Union, who also work for a signatory contractor. We have no issue with this. This is how we've done work previously in this fashion. We have worked for other clients with the exact same situation. Our company is not signatory to the Carpenters Union, and therefore we were subcontracting the carpentry work to Reimar Forming and Construction, who is signatory to the Carpenters Union, to perform carpentry work as required. This is exactly how non-carpentry signatory general contractors perform work all across Ontario with clients that are signatory to the Carpenters Union. As Steve mentioned, this is how it is done in Toronto. This is how we have done work previously in the city of Sault Ste. Marie, who is signatory to the Carpenters Union. And this is exactly how we've done work for Hydro One, who is signatory to the Carpenters Union. After we were low tender, we were told by the City of Hamilton employees that we must be signatory to the Carpenters Union, which does not make sense to us when it is not done this way in Toronto, Sault Ste. Marie, Hydro One, and others. So I stand here today before you and still don't understand why a pre-qualified contractor by the city who submits a bid 18% low or is saving taxpayers $325,000 is disqualified. Maybe someone could answer that better.
Thank you. At the end of your sort of presentation, I have 2 councillors that have questions of the presenters, correct? And the councillor going to staff. So Councillor Johnson first, and Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. And thank you for coming this morning. I was going through your correspondence, and it starts on November the 5th. When was this tender? When did the tender process start for you?
The tender process started with the pre-qualification, and that would have been months ahead of that. Approximately 3 months, I would have to take it up.
Okay, so for argument's sake, August. Sure. August, September. Okay, and when were you informed that you were the lowest bidder?
That would
Get
be,
some timelines here.
well, that would be just after we submitted the tender, but 3 weeks after.
Okay, so say September. And your first note that I've got here is on November the 5th, and this letter is to confirm that Reimar Forming and Construction is signatory. So this is November 5th. This is, I assume, is a letter in response to you not getting the bid?
Correct.
Okay, so the bidding process went through. You know you're the lowest bidder. You didn't get the bid because of this condition, which is you have to be signatory, correct?
No. The requirement is that the requirement of this specific contract is that the bidder must be bound by the carpenter's agreement, and the person doing the work must be bound. The signatory was a whole new issue that was brought after the tender was submitted and after we had submitted letters.
So the tender goes in, you were told that you had the lowest, then you were told you were refused because of that condition about not being bounded, correct?
There were 2 or 3 letters back and forth.
2 or 3 letters. So this November 5th is taken out of a stream of letters? This is the first, or is this in the middle of corresponding going back and forth? I think my question should be, when was the city staff notified that you are dealing with a contractor who is bounded?
2 days after we submitted the bid.
2 days after you submitted. Thank you.
Correct.
Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, to you, to the presenters. First of all, North American is a great company.
Thank you.
I have a long history in the construction business and always respected your firm and your abilities, particularly around the water wastewater side. So there's no issue with your qualifications to my knowledge, and it sounds like you run a very good company. As far as why a non-union general contractor was permitted to do the stadium work, just for your information, the city was not the contracting authority. It was infrastructure and interior. In the bid book for the Pan Am Games, it was very clear that IO shall be the contracting authority for all Pan Am facilities, so they could get done on time and on budget. It's been an oxymoron now in what we've been experiencing. But for years now, nothing troubles me more than taxpayers having to shell out $300,000 more because of a collective agreement. But this was imposed on us by the province. And Labor Relations Board, under the construction agreements, I'm sure you know, they issue 50% plus 1 of signed cards, and they can make application for certifications up to the employer then to determine. And it's a very short time frame. The employer can challenge those number of cards and how many employees are on site. And of course, I think you know the history, I understand, unless you've been too busy bidding work lately in the last 5 years, is that we did challenge that, but the Carpenters Union sent the notice of certification to a remote fax machine on Webber Street, not to our regular fax machine. And the 3-day time period had passed before we found it, therefore it was automatic cert. And we have the exact same collective agreement with the city that you would have if you became certified. It's negotiated by the Ontario General Contractors Association. So my question to you is, was that not made clear to you at the time of the bidding that the general contractor had to be signatory to the Carpenters Union? And did you tell in your application for qualifications, did you indicate that you would become certified if you build a little better?
Thank you. On the first question, as to whether we were notified if we had to be certified, no. We were informed that the City of Hamilton is signatory to the Carpenters Union and that the carpentry work must be performed by the Carpenters Union. However, we were not informed that the general contractor must as well be certified, even in the event that he has subcontracted work to a subcontractor whom is certified. This is exactly how we've done it with other municipalities with the exact same agreement.
But you realize they have different collective agreements. The one imposed on us because it was a cert, because 2 or 3 people signed cards, was the agreement that you would have if you became certified as a contractor. Toronto has something different, and because they negotiated with all the unions, not just the carpenters. But just for your benefit, there is a lot of negotiations going on now, particularly with the water wastewater side, with the Hamilton General Contractors Association. And you may want to encourage them to come to terms with us on it, because I think it would make it more palatable for a company like North American. I can't say any more than that because we haven't gone public with this yet, but there is work in progress to try to fix this. But are you a member of the North American member of the Hamilton General Contractors Association?
We're a member of the Ontario General Contractors
So
Association.
it's the same thing then. Yes. Business outside area. That's all my questions for now, Madam Chair, but I would like to question the staff after the delegation is finished.
Thank you, and I would assume the delegations are complete now, so I would ask that we receive the delegation, then we'll go into comments and questions to staff. So move to receive. Councillor Henry, Councillor Brenda Johnson, all in favor. Carried. Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll direct comments to staff or questions. Councillor Collins, I have first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my question would be to whoever chooses to answer it. The whole issue of the pre-qualification process and the whole issue related to the signatory to the Carpenters Union issue. Can I just get an understanding as to when the packages are distributed with the specifications included, how do we treat that issue as part of the bid process internally?
Through you, Madam Chair, when the tender documents are issued, it would indicate that the successful proponent would have to be bound to the carpenters union. Bound does not mean that they have an agreement with a subcontractor who is bound to the carpenters union. Bound means that they've signed a Schedule C agreement with the carpenters union directly, which means that they voluntarily recognize the carpenters union, and they will be bound by the provincial collective agreement by having signed that document. When we issue the pre-qualification, we issue it for any contractors who might have the expertise and resources to undertake the project. But it is known that in the end, in order for them to be awarded the contract, they would have to provide proof that they are bound to the carpenters union as per the requirement. And we have had instances in the past where there have been contractors who were not bound when they put in their submission, and based upon the results of the tender, when they were the low bid, they chose to voluntarily sign up with the carpenters union, provide as proof that they had signed up so they could be awarded the contract in any future work that required carpenters on it.
Okay, I wanted clarification on that. I think you just answered my question. So you could, in fact, make it through the pre-qualification process without being signatory to the carpenters union. And after you've made it through that phase, if in fact you were the successful low bid through the process, the only way to meet the city's criteria would be then to form that arrangement with the carpenters union. Is that correct? So you're not necessarily disqualified through the pre-qualification process with the fact that you may not be have an agreement with them at that time.
That's correct.
Okay. So there was a suggestion made through Madam Chairman to adopt what Toronto has adopted. Has purchasing, in consultation with other divisions and departments, investigated what Toronto has adopted, which might allow companies like the one in front of us today to to secure work for a much lower cost?
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely. We've had discussions with Toronto over the years. We've had discussions with the Local Carpenters Association, Local 18, and the Hamilton General Contractors Association asking for such an agreement to be put in place for Hamilton. It would require an amendment under Article 18 of the Provincial Collective Agreement, which is to be put in place to address hardships. We've asked for it. They have not been willing to give us that same consideration.
And I think that's important, Madam Chairman, because we have pursued that, and unfortunately we've been unsuccessful. It's not something that we can just unilaterally alter or change ourselves. So those are the only questions I have at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
I think Councillor Collins asked most of my questions, but just for some clarity to the future record, I just want to be clear, we don't ask potential proponents at the pre-qualification stage if they are in fact certified by the carpenters union. We just ignore that question, just have provisions in it that if they're the low and successful bidder, they must prove it.
You, Madam Chair, we do not insist that they be bound by the carpenters agreement at that point in time, but we make it known to them that if in fact they do pre-qualify and they were to be successful on the tender, they would have to be bound to the carpenters union.
Okay, I wish I could have asked that question to the President of North America just to make sure we have clarity on that. Would you permit me to, Madam Chairman, to ask that question just to make sure they understood it that same way?
I'll ask committee's indulgence. Everyone, Councillor Collins seconds, and Councillor Ferguson moves. Someone can come back down. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Scott, were you aware of that, through you, Madam Chairman, that in the pre-qualification documents, and which is pretty typical, I think, when you're pre-qualifying, you look at your financial capacity and you look at your past projects and your skill level. Do you agree that those documents pointed out to you that while you didn't have to be certified at that time, it would be a requirement if you're the low bidder?
It had the exact same statement with the word bound. And of the 9 contractors that were pre-qualified, 4 were only certified by the carpenters.
Do you think any one of those 4, if they got the project, would have signed a job-specific agreement with the carpenters?
It's not been their history to do that, no.
Okay, but you agree it was in the pre-qualification documents that you would have to become certified if you were the successful bidder?
The statement that was there was definitely there. They said the bidder must be bound, and so must, and the the company performing the work must be bound.
Okay, that's all the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. And I'm going to ask a motion to receive. Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Collins, all in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. We have no presentations today. I'm going to go on to item 8.1 is discussion items. 2015 advance payments to external boards and agencies. Any questions or comments? 8.1, I have a motion to move it. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, seconded by Councillor Pursuit. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 8.2 is custody services authorization to negotiate. No questions, comments. Moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.3 is the 2015 interim tax levy and temporary borrowing bylaws. Questions or comments? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Aidan Johnson, seconded by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 8.4 is HMRF and HWRF Pension Administration Subcommittee Report 14-001. Questions or comments? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Aidan Johnson. All in favor? 8.5, Audit Services Charter. Questions or comments? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Thank you. 8.6, Audit Annual Follow-Up of Outstanding Audit Recommendations. Questions? I've already taken, I'm not sure who. Councillor Brenda Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you. And I so miss agenda reviews because you always go through these very well. I've put lots of tabs in here, so if you can just bear with me for a minute, please. This is your report, your annual follow-up for all the recommendations you've given to certain departments to follow through. Some are in process, some are not doing it at all, some are completed. So I started to read through some things here, and so of page 3 of 42, at the very bottom, and this is under City Manager's Office, no action has been taken by management. Management considers this item to be a low priority. Is this something that worries you, or are we okay with that?
Through the chair, we want all our recommendations implemented naturally. This is a comment made by management of actually human resource. They have a lot of things, as you see, prior to that on their slate, and are considering this to be one of the ones that are sort of low priority that they will get to, but they need to get all the other things are of higher priority to them.
Okay, thank you. One of the things that stood out for me for the community emergency emergency services, it seems like a lot of the rec centers, and it looks like it's all been a copy and paste response. We don't know what types of safes we're using. There's no evidence of management review, and the report has not been modified to ensure that all revenue is captured. And I'm seeing that on every single, and this we're talking page 9 of 42 all the way down to page 12, page 13 of 42. Has any progress been made at all in your audit and your follow-up?
Through the chair, all of these were found prior to the policy passed by Committee and Council for the cash handling last year.
Right.
So they are now in the process of implementing the corporate-wide standards.
Right.
So all of these are addressed in that policy.
Right.
We will be, you'll see in the 2015 work plan, what we have are called spot cash counts.
Right.
We will be taking that policy and auditing against how much progress they've made with the new policy.
Okay, so all these completion dates of October 14, September 14, it would be safe to say we need to bump that up to at least the beginning of the summer until all these things come in place, or what's your anticipation for the due date now?
Through the chair, I would say that this year they will start implementing because the policy was just approved late last year.
Okay, super, thank you. And if you go to page 14 of 42, the metered water billings and revenue, it's undetermined. This was a 2006 directive, and now we're in 2015. And it says a formal change-out program for its water meters. However, a completion date cannot be determined as the scope and type of replacement is still under consideration. So 9 years later, we're still considering it. Is there any response to that?
Through the chair, we are right now in the process of doing this water billing again on the recommendation that went through council late last year. So we will probably be updating this to see what exactly is happening here. Have they started something totally new or what? But we're doing a complete audit in water billings right now.
So we audited it in 2006, recommendations were put in place, nothing was done. 2015, we're going to re-audit now to see whether or not things have changed somewhat or not at all, correct?
The chair, that's correct.
So, Mr. Segarra, can you, through you, Chair, to Mr. Segarra, have you got any indication on this 9-year project that hasn't taken off the ground yet?
Through the chair, I don't believe anyone from Public Works are available today, but I know the councillor was absent last week due to personal requirements. But Dan McKinnon, the director of Hamilton Water, presented to committee, I believe, last week during the rate budget deliberations, or sorry, a week and a half ago, that they are focused on the industrial and commercial meters. So in terms of meter changeouts, I believe the observation by internal audit relates to the meter changeouts, and meters are like a cash register for a business in that it captures the amount of the resource that is being utilized. So again, they're focused on materiality, given that industrial and commercial accounts are greater users. I believe that's where the focus for Hamilton Water is as it relates to meter changeouts. However, there are some residential meters that do get replaced from time to time, and there are some residential meters that have extended their useful life or beyond their useful life, and they too need to be focused on in terms of potential replacement in an effort to generate the revenue that's related to the utilization of the resource, in this case water.
I'll take the rest of that because I did meet with Dan McKinnon a couple of weeks ago over this, so I will take that one offline. The next questions I have are on page 17 of 42 through you, Chair, to Ann. When I read about the IS and what needs to be put into place, it seems like one thing is being held up, so therefore the rest of the procedures that you put recommendations in, have been delayed. So it's like a domino effect, correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, so have we got any indication where the first domino is going to be set up so the rest will fall in place?
Through the chair, I think that the whole reference here is IT governance. That's really what's directing, actually most of the activity, will be directing most of the activities within IT. I know that currently there is some work being done on IT governance. I just don't know at what stage it's at. I don't know if Mike or someone from that area would be able to comment more on the current status.
And through you to Mike, through you, Chair, to Mike, when I see the first initial directive was in 2010, and the first domino still hasn't been put into place to get this whole sheet to be looked at, you'll see most at the beginning they all say, dependent on completion of item number 1, depending on completion of item number 6, depending on, it just continues on. So it's for 4 years now, and I'm probably speaking out of frustration for the staff as well. If this is something they want to get completed, but these building blocks are not put into place, so what can we do to help that building block start?
So through the chair, I think that council has provided some support through the IT governance project. The challenge has been, and it goes back to probably the original audit back to 2010, there was an IT strategy that was developed. Some would suggest that it's still relevant today in many ways. In 2014, we did embark on developing a framework with the assistance of Manta in regards to an IT governance strategy. There, I believe, are 8 action items that came out of that report, and it is an initiative that senior management team continue to try to move forward. I believe we are meeting in the near future in an effort to try to make it a priority. I just want to remind councillors that this came forward at the same time as the web redevelopment and the call handling, and so again, there are challenges in an effort to resource these corporate initiatives. So I just want to make certain that I don't leave the impression that we aren't moving forward with this type of work. We are, but again, the call handling and the web were of a higher priority, and again, more resources were applied to those initiatives in the short term.
Okay, thank you for that. Second, sorry. There's pieces of some of these things under fleet and under facilities maintenance and even our museums. Through you, Chair, to Anne, would it be reasonable to expect that one museum doesn't necessarily work identical to another depending on frequency of visitors, frequency of workshops? Or is it fair to say that they should all be operating under the exact same procedure?
Through the chair, yes, there's got to be some consideration given to the size of the operation. Some of these areas have one person working there.
Right.
It's only open one day a week.
Right.
The cash turnover, very, very low. We say for the cash handling policy, yes, there's basic principles that should be applied in any situation. It's just that each location has to give consideration to its particular operations, but those basic standards should be in every operation.
Okay, and thank you for that, Anne. And is there anything else you wanted to add to this report overall?
Through the chair, I'll just like to say that the numbers are getting better. Last year we reported 85% completion. It's now up to 88%.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And my question for Anne is on page, it refers to page 3 of 5, and it's the chart in terms of the completion rates for the audit recommendations. And I'm just curious to know, I know Anne meets quite regularly with their counterparts in other areas of the province, but I'm wondering if our percentages there in the chart, and it seems like we're almost at, close to the 100% mark after a period of 4 or 5 years. Is that the industry norm, or are we unique in that sense?
Through the chair, these results actually, if you compare them, and I don't want to do but Toronto because they do something very similar, our results are actually better.
That's good to hear. Perfect. I had some similar questions as Councillor Johnson had for the IT and IS area. And mine relate to the capital budget process. And so many of the recommendations that have flowed through the audit process required resources through the capital budget process to implement it. And I believe, in fact, that there is a budget line that talks about IS audit improvements. I may have misstated its label as capital budget. But how much are these recommendations tied to the capital budget process? And how much can be done internally without additional resources?
Through you, Madam Chair, especially in the IT area, they definitely do need capital commitment. Anything to do with technology costs money. They do have a plan. There are some things that they can move ahead on. IT governance itself, though, will, once it's established, there may be an influx of further capital requests.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have at this point.
Mike, you didn't want to add anything there at all? Sorry, Scott.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the earlier question around the common address database is a good example where we are leveraging the observations from internal audit. So the observation from internal audit was there may be opportunities to utilize a common solution, IT solution, as it relates to common address database. The observation, I believe, was that we currently have 3 IT solutions. So departments are using different vendors, different IT solutions. So when we went out with the RFP recently on this particular project, we did endeavor to consult with all of the departments in an effort to identify what would be required to utilize one IT solution. So in terms of IT governance, those are the type of actions we need to in terms of common management practices, those need to be our common management practices. As it relates to IT governance, part of the work of IT governance is identifying what the resources are across the corporation as it relates to IT work, and what IT resources, whether they're human capital or IT technology solutions, are we employing in an effort to be more effective and more efficient as it relates to our support of IT projects. I just also want to leave committee members with a understanding in terms of some of the challenges as it relates to some of the IT capital projects, and I know we're going to have further discussions later this week around the budget. There are some projects that fall under IT, however, they are really projects that support services within departments. And part of the challenge for IT is we need to get the support from the departments to move those projects forward. So while they're classified as IT projects, so examples are the Common Address Database, GIS, those are solutions that really support the services. And so some of the delays in the past, and I'll just remind committee that in 2014 we didn't request any capital projects because we had some active projects that we were still pursuing. Some of the challenges in the past have been getting the support from the service areas and moving those projects forward. So I just want to, and I'm sure we'll expand on the questions that were raised by the councillors over the weekend as it relates to the status of the projects. And again, we'll expand through our responses back to the councillors.
I do, and I wasn't going to raise the common address database issue, but Mike has referenced it. And I was rereading information that Mr. Rossini had presented to council in 2011, and I understand the common address database issue in terms of, as I understand, even funding comes from some of the departments outside of IT and IS, so it sounds like a multi-stakeholder issue that IT and IS are the lead. And when I read through the work plan for IS in 2011, it included as a goal and objective whole issue of a common database, common address database. And so it's presented to council in 2011 as a key part of the work plan for that area of the organization. It's funded through the capital budget process. I just finished asking Ann in terms of how reliant are some of these initiatives in terms of progressing, how are they related to the capital budget. Capital budget is provided, and then if you look at the take-up in terms of the amount of money that's spent after the money is provided, it for me is a small indicator in terms of how much of a priority it is corporately. So if I use that one as the example, the money's provided, it's referenced in a 2011 work plan as a common objective, not just from that department but others. And then here we are in 2015, still talking about it. So if it's multi-departmental, what happens then if someone in that group is stalling the project and it's not moving forward? I don't think it's fair that IT or IS certainly take the blame or fault for its delay, but at some point in time, internally, someone has to pick up the torch and say, this is corporately a priority, we're going to move forward even with reluctant partners, and we're going to make some progress in this area. Madam Chair.
So through the chair, Councillor Collins' description somewhat describes this project in terms of how it's proceeded, and we've had some challenges in terms of moving this project forward. And again, last year we didn't request any additional IT projects because we had some challenges in moving a number of projects, including this one, forward. I will report that we have made some significant progress in terms of not only this project but other projects. If you look back to our capital status reports in 2013, there are a number that were at 0% spent or committed, which are now closer to that 50% spent and committed. The challenge with respect to trying to coordinate responses across a number of service areas the way that we've addressed it is to try to identify what the business solutions are for those respective areas. So for instance, rather than requiring areas to sign on to say, this will be, for instance, the IT solution that you're committed to going forward, what our IT staff have done is they've developed a comprehensive list of the requirements of the business areas, of the service areas. Therefore, when we go out with an RFP, we should be identifying the opportunity to utilize an IT solution that serves everyone's purposes going forward. And the potential benefit of that approach is if there is one common solution, in the case of common address database, there may be some efficiencies and savings by employing one solution than 3 solutions. So again, in terms of the approach, is we don't necessarily wait for everyone to commit. What we do is we engage all the service areas to identify what their business requirements are, and we ensure that those form part of the contents of the RFP.
Okay, and I apologize because I'm kind of outside of what we're dealing with here in terms of the audit, but there is a correlation I thought I heard from you in terms of the monies that are provided and the audit process. And again, I only reference the capital budget because there is a line there that says, I think it's the implementation of the audit recommendations, and for me to see, a substantial amount of money still in the account, and then to see the list of outstanding audit recommendations, I'm just trying to correlate those 2 issues. And anyway, those are the questions I have. I have others. I'll save them for later in the week as we get through the capital budget process.
Thank you, Councillor. May I have a motion to receive this item? Moved by Councillor Collins, seconded by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll now go on to item 8.7 is the 2015 Internal Audit Work Plan. Questions or comments? Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, just one question. I'm picking up on IT also on page 3 of 5. And I know we posed this question to senior IT staff, but our internal auditors, a big part of what they do is measure risk. And there's been a lot of challenges worldwide on cyber theft. And of course, the Pentagon's been hit in sunny pictures, and of course, there's been other examples too. And I know it may be a difficult question to ask, but through you to Ann, and are you comfortable, because you're trained in measuring risk, that we have enough safeguards in place to prevent the city from being hacked, and particularly as it relates to obtaining confidential information?
Through the chair, we have staff on ours, like in audit, that have been trained in IT audit. Last year we did a audit on security and access into our various systems. And this year what we're going to be doing is business continuity, disaster planning, which is if we were hacked, could we continue to operate? What measures are we taking to be able to continue and to resolve those issues?
Because I don't think there's any question technology is emerging, becoming more sophisticated, but so are the hackers. And as we saw in the sunny pictures, if you get into the Pentagon, that's going to be pretty serious. And there's a lot of people that get a rush out of just sitting at the computers trying to do this. And so the people who are trained in this area, are they getting updates regularly of what's emerging in the hacking world and the cyber theft world, so that we can make sure we continue to put safeguards in place? I think Mike wants to take that answer.
So through the chair, as Ann's identified, there was an audit of our security practices. There is a plan in place. There is a 2015 capital project to ensure that we continue to protect the corporation and the corporation's interests with respect to our technology, ensuring that it is secured. We do have information that we can share with council in terms of how effective we are in towards that objective of securing the city's contents, and not only the city's contents, but our taxpayers' personal information. So we can share that information with councillors, and we can look at opportunities on how to share that with councillors without necessarily providing to the public some general knowledge as to what our management practices are.
So maybe a future in-camera report then of this committee? That'd be great. Thanks, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Collins?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. I was interested to see the development and growth audit project that's been proposed. And I don't recall many of the others that are on the list I've seen in other years, but the development and growth one is an interesting one. And I'm wondering how we're going to gauge through the audit process what metrics are going to be gauged for this one, because it seems like it could be interpreted as a very subjective issue. And there aren't a lot of hard metrics there. So I'm curious to know what audit is using for that review, for your Madam Chair.
Through the chair, you'll see that we've left the subject matter kind of open. We know that development growth is very key to the initiatives that the direction the city's taking. So we're going to be looking at the various programs that are being put forward, and from there we will choose a program that we will try to either compare to other municipalities, look for metrics, see if we have the information available internally to be able to develop that metric. They may have benchmarking themselves, we will look at that. But as of, we need to actually go in and see which programs they are running and be able to choose from there. That you'll see that a specific topic isn't indicated there. But in that area is indicated as an area that we need to look at.
I'm very interested to see what the findings are and what you choose in this process.
If I can, through you, Chairman, it's interesting Anne has identified this as her first new project because a couple of things. We did engage the former Commissioner of Engineering in Stony Creek, Dean Neville, and a few of his colleagues in working with us to look at our whole development process. We've heard over the years some concerns expressed about the time it takes for us to get things approved. In light of our economy warming up, we want to make certain that our processes and our staff are as on top of things as they need to be. So I'll be coming back to this committee at some point here, I think in the first quarter, with the results of that work. That still, I think, works kind of hand in glove with what Anne is going to do with in terms of her audit. But the other thing I want to mention to you in terms of senior management team, we are going to get a little bit more focused on a few key areas of business. The first one is development and economic development, and so you're going to see the GMs of those departments directly affected working more closely with directors and managers to make sure that all the things that need to happen are happening in terms of accommodating growth. It's good that it's number one on Anne's list, because I can tell you it's number one on senior management team's list. We know we've got some work to do in terms of some of the processes that we currently use to approve growth, but we want to sit down with staff and start to find answers to how it is that we can move the economy here in Hamilton a bit quicker than it's going right now.
And I was very surprised to see here, because I think you reiterated it's the first time we've seen it on the list. And I raise it in the context again, only because it's that time of year, but looking at the capital budget and to see the council invested about $1.5 million in economic development through the 2013 budget process, and staff has yet to spend any money from that account. You wouldn't know it from, I know the numbers reflected in terms of our building permits and certainly a lot of the cranes that we see downtown, but in many respects, it's almost as if we're waiting for things to happen rather than making them happen. So I'm really looking forward to this one, and certainly happy to hear too that SNT recognizes that this is a big issue for this General Council.
Thank you. Seeing no further speakers, can I have a motion to approve item 8.7, moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Collins. All in favor? Great, thank you, everyone. Item 8.8 is report 2014-15, review of Hamilton Police Services HPS issues identified with Mr. Chandra Shekhar. You've received that item. Any discussion? Councillor Aidan Johnson.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Chandrasekhar, who's a very active citizen and community activist in Westdale in Ward 1, for teaching me a lot about auditing and for his vigilance and helping us to be a more efficient city.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and Susie Jan. And I read through the report very carefully, highlighted a lot of the issues in it. And there was 13 concerns or proposed changes that Shaker had pointed out. And I've interpreted from your report that based on the information that Shaker supplied to you, there is none of the concerns or allegations could be substantiated. That may not be the right word. So maybe the better question to you is, as chairman of the Police Services Board, do I need to be at all concerned about some of the things that Shaker pointed out to you, or are you satisfied that, based on the information you received, that everything is satisfactory?
Through the chair, I do not believe from the work we were able to carry out that there is anything that should deeply concern the board.
Okay, that's good. Thanks very much. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
No further questions, comments. May I have a motion to approve item 8.8, moved by Councillor Johnson, second by
I'll
Councillor.
also refer to the Police Services Board.
Okay, and
That was part of the recommendation that I read, is that they received and forwarded to the Police Services Board.
right, so we're moving the recommendations, Councillor, right? Okay, so moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Ferguson, all in favor? And I also need a motion to receive the correspondence from Shaker. Moved by Councillor Johnson, second by Councillor Ferguson, all in favor?
And just one other comment. I want to echo what Councillor Aidan Johnson said. We always appreciate citizens watching and asking questions, and that's what Shaker tried to do. And so we took the appropriate action as the Police Services Board to turn back to the city, because KPMG does the audit of the police services, and asked, rather than go hire an external auditor, use our internal auditor. And thank you to him for getting this done so quick. I didn't realize he had such a big workload until I see all these reports today. But just thank her also for meeting Shaker and going through it all in detail and getting this thorough report back to us.
And sorry, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
I also noticed from the staff response. Oh, sorry, that was not. I also noticed from the staff response how much work Mike Zagaric, our hardworking finance chief, did, also corresponding with Mr. Chandrasekhar. So thanks also to Mike.
Thank you, everyone. So we moved and seconded it. All in favor? Sure. Thank you. Item 8.9 is the audit report 2014-7. Community Emergency Services, Hamilton Paramedic Services, HPS, scheduling and payroll. Questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the Councillor Ferguson?
Just a quick question. It's not to deal with the payroll or what's done in this report, but during the budget presentation, we're going to hear, I believe, a request for additional paramedics, and because of all the code zeros that we're getting throughout the city. And of course, I've done a review of this, and it was a hotly contested issue in 2006. And from 2000 to 2006, our spending went up 7 times the rate of inflation to our paramedics through growth, and more services, and better wages, and a number of reasons. But in 2006, the chief at the time came to us and said, you have a chronic problem here with this. I think we had 10 or 12 code zeros, and that we needed an extra $6 million or 60 paramedics to address that problem. And so a majority of council agreed with that, put in the $6 million, but of course our code zeros have gone from 10 or 12 to 200 since then, so it went in the wrong direction. And of course, I keep hearing from paramedic services, and we'll probably hear it through the budget deliberations also. A big part of the problem is the offload at hospitals. But of course, the hospitals say, well, we've got additional funding from the province to bring in offload nurses to fix that problem. Through you to Ann, is this whole code zero issue, offload issue, something that you've got your head around to help us better understand why the more money we throw at the service, the service levels seem to deteriorate?
Through the chair, this audit didn't really address the code zeros. This looked at scheduling staff itself. It could be something that we could undertake as an additional audit if council so directed. I'm just wondering again, this would, if you're saying that the hospitals are, it's being referred to the hospitals, I don't know how much cooperation we would get from the hospitals in doing that kind of an audit.
I don't, from what I've been honest, I don't think we have an issue with getting support from the hospitals, either our paramedic chiefs or our chairman or our city manager or others, but it would be interesting to have outside eyes look in, because it just puzzles me why the more money we throw at this, the service levels seem to go south. And this may be something we have to wait to the budget deliberations to get our head around. But I was curious by Ann's comments, Madam Chairman, that if directed by council, maybe something she could help us get our head around as to why we're getting these results, because it's unnerving to see that by continuing to spend more and more money, our code zeros get worse and worse and worse, whether it's the province putting in offload versus or us adding more paramedics. So I'll wait probably till the paramedics division does their presentation, then maybe take Ann's advice to council, ask her director to take on an outside look at this.
Madam Chair, to the councillor's question with respect to the code zeros, certainly we've been challenged on the code zeros that we move forward through this year. That's not the only issue that we end up dealing with. There's also the issue of call volume growth, the criticality of calls, and a range of other things. And we will be going through those mechanisms and those issues when we bring forward the report. I can tell you that for the first 6 months of the last fiscal year, we were significantly challenged on code zeros. It has to do with the flow through the hospitals. It has to do with our actual time on task with the paramedics. However, it was aggressive work with the hospitals, the assistant to the city manager, General Manager Prayal. We worked very aggressively with the hospitals. They cooperated extremely well. We've been managing to wrestle those code zeros down significantly. That doesn't mitigate against the need to end up putting in additional staff. We will be dealing with that issue, but I can assure you that we are working very closely with the hospitals to reduce the code zeros. I was actually very happy to report to the city manager and to General Manager Prayal that in the month of November were the very first months in 7 years that we didn't have a single code zero. So we are making the right headway on that, and we are doing the right things.
Okay, I look forward to seeing that during the paramedic presentation. My question was more related, is this something Audit can take another time to look at and help us with trying to solve this problem? But I'm pleased to hear, remember the zero code zeros. That's interesting information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, did you want to elaborate? No, thank you. Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and I was interested in item number 2 in the audit, and there's a disagreement between audit staff and yes, and I'm curious to know in terms of the maximum hours worked. Ann's findings are clearly listed here, and then there's a disagreement that we are in fact violating the Employment Standards Act, and I wonder who's the arbiter in that process. Is that where our own HR investigates? I mean, it's a fairly serious issue to raise. It's one that one area of the organization through believes that we're in violation, and there seems to be disagreement certainly from the management of our paramedic services. And so I think we do need to resolve that internally somehow. I'm wondering how we go about doing that.
Anne?
And I'd like to start. I think that here that it's a classic example of what we interpret being a week being 7 consecutive days, according to the Employment Standards Act, whereas paramedics, and I believe it's actually within the collective agreement itself, identifies the time period as 5 consecutive days. However, if you take those, there's a two-day difference. If you take scheduling purposes, it is possible that somebody can work excess of the allowable hours in according to the Employment Standards Act. So what we're just drawing attention to here is it's 60 hours. It's considered, anything beyond that is considered a violation according to their definition, but our collective agreement identifies it as something different. So I don't know how to further progress this through the organization.
Through you, Madam Chair, the other issue that we end up dealing with paramedic services, we're working a 12-hour schedule. We do regularly, as it notes in here, have paramedics scheduled on 48, 36 hours in each 7-day period. So we don't normally schedule people in excess of 60 hours. There are times when a paramedic will work an overtime shift and they get up to 60 hours in that pay period, and that's certainly within the means and the meaning of the collective agreement and the Employment Standards Act. The disagreement that we have in terms of the 60 hours is when a paramedic works shift overrun, which is something we have no control over as responding to emergencies. The Employment Standards Act does allow overtime in terms of shift overrun, which may end up putting the paramedic at 61, 62, or 63 hours during that particular pay period. As a result of that, the option on that would be to end up reducing the paramedic coming into work on their next shift, which of course becomes unmanageable in terms of trying to manage our staff. Our discussions with Human Resources and our discussions with Employment Standard, the language is relatively clear in terms of overtime and shift overrun being allowed on that. But we do agree, and then we actually schedule on the basis, as the authors recommended, in terms of the number of regular shifts that are scheduled. It's the shift overrun we're having an issue with.
Yes, and beyond the whole issue of the maximum work hours is the shift overrun where we see the next disagreement. And I'm wondering if Anne can elaborate on what they found with the shift overruns. I know you've given an example here, and what you've recommended and what you hope to achieve through the recommendation that you've provided.
Through the chair, shift overruns occur when a paramedic works more than their scheduled shift, which is usually like 7 to 7. The example there shows you that, okay, 7 to 7. If, for instance, the paramedic worked till 7:31, what we're commenting on here is that he or she would be paid 3/4 of an hour of shift overrun, meaning that minute that's past 7:31, their collective agreement allows them 15 minutes on that 1 minute. So our recommendation basically was saying through this system, but a lot of it will depend on the system that's chosen, because right now a lot of things are manual here, and we're actually recommending an automated system to be able to provide a listing of people and their shift overruns and look for patterns. Are there people that consistently work that extra minute in order to get their 15 minutes? When we did sort of a preliminary study and we provided some of the numbers to Mike here, there were 39 of the 211 people that had incurred shift overruns in a 4-month period accounted for 45% of that overtime. So again, looking for patterns of that type, having the ability to run a report and having someone look at it quarterly or whatever to see if there are those kind of patterns that can be addressed, similar to absenteeism.
Sorry, what's the cost of something like this in terms of incurring the additional cost? There's no dollar figure referenced here, but do you have a best guess?
Through the chair, I don't, but if you want, I can try to see if I can get a number into like we did a 4-month period in 2014. I could see what shift overruns. I don't know if...
Well, I only asked that in the context. I thought I heard you say that one of the recommendations would be to go to an automated system. It would be cost certainty of implementing an automated system. I'm wondering what the payback of such a system would be.
Through the chair, I have overtime cost in that 4-month period that we looked at was over $500,000, 4 months.
Through the chair, the actual overtime cost for the 572 incidents where it was a small 1 or 2 minute time period, be about 572 incidents of a quarter hour each, which comes out to about 125 overtime hours, and the hourly rate being just under $40 an hour, a time and a half. So the mathematics on it are relatively straightforward. With respect to automating the system, we're already looking at automating the system, when the process of evaluating a new scheduling software and a reporting software. It's part of our capital project we've been working on since last year, and it's still outstanding in the capital request. Staff are actually meeting today with the vendor to validate whether or not the software will actually do what it's intended to do. But it's more than just automating to capture these issues. It's linking it back into the PeopleSoft system and doing a range of other automated activities as well as telestaffing.
Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chairman. I think what I've read too, even with an automated system, you'd still need the language, changing the language in the collective agreement to go to the rounding that has been suggested. Is that correct? Whether it's manual or automated?
Through the chair, we would have to change the practice and have language in the collective agreement to allow to do it. However, I do agree with the auditor in terms of focusing a lens on those issues. If we have an automated system, we're not expending significant amounts of management time doing it. There's probably value in trying to do that to drive overtime costs down. So we do agree in the principle. It's the mechanics of doing it on a manual basis right now that we're having challenges with.
Well, I'd still like, some resolution on the maximum hours worked. I think that's a pretty big outstanding issue. Just in terms of interpretation, I as one individual, would need to be assured that we are in compliance with provincial regulations, and I would hope that internally, HR in consultation with our auditor and our paramedic service and S&T can determine whether or not we are meeting not just the spirit but the letter of the law as it relates to the Employment Standards Act. So I don't think I need a recommendation for that, Madam Chairman, but I would like to give direction for staff to come back and give us some kind of an interpretation.
Staff are nodding their heads. They're taking that forward. Thank you. No other questions, comments? Can I have a motion to approve item 8.9, moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Ferguson. All in favor? Carried. Item 8.10 is the audit report 2014-04, corporate services long-term debt. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Brenda Johnson, second by Councillor Robert Pasuto. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Item 8.11 is the follow-up of Audit Report 2013-01, Public Health Services Cold Chain BIOS Program. Questions or comments? Anyone? Motion to approve item 8. Councillor Ferguson moving it to approve it, and second by Councillor Vanderbeek. All in favor? Thank you. 8.12, Management Responses to Performance Audit Report 2013-19, GPS AVL Systems Performance Review. Questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion to approve item 8.12, moved by Councillor Robert Pasuto, second by Councillor Chad Collins. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. There are no motions today. Any notices of motion? General information or other business? Seeing none. No private confidential. May I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Brendan Johnson. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone.